This is the lecture for, his name is Frankfurt. What's his full name? Harry Frankfurt. This is the lecture for Harry Frankfurt's Alternate Possibilities in Moral Responsibility. So the first point is about free will and moral responsibility. The article does a good job of explaining this. So the first sentence is, a dominant role in nearly all recent inquiries into the free will problem has been played by a principle which I shall call the principle of alternate possibilities. This principle states that a person is morally responsible for what he has done, only if he could have done otherwise. So notice in the first two sentences, we're talking about free will and moral responsibility, and they're basically being treated as synonymous with each other. So whether or not you're morally responsible for something is basically asking whether or not you've freely done it, whether you've done it with your free will. And that's just to point out that this is how most people in the debate are thinking about things, or at least on the surface. The thought is that free will and moral responsibility are very closely tied together. So why would you care about having free will? Well, one reason is that we might think, or why would you care about whether or not we have free will? One reason is you might think if we don't have free will, then we're not morally responsible for the things you do. It would be wrong to punish me for something I've done if I didn't do that thing freely. So if somebody grabs my arm and forces it to hit somebody else, we wouldn't want to punish me for hitting the person because I didn't do it freely. I was forced into doing it. So the thought is that free will and moral responsibility kind of stand and fall together. You can't be morally responsible for something unless you're free. And I guess, you couldn't really be free unless you're at least potentially capable of being morally responsible for things. So that's just to highlight that connection. Again, I think Frankfurt makes it pretty clear, but it's worth making it pretty clear. Second, this article is a defense of what's known, well, basically a defense of what's known as compatibilism. So, as he says in the third sentence, its exact meaning is a subject of controversy, particularly concerning whether someone who accepts it is thereby committed to believing that moral responsibility and determinism are incompatible. So this question of determinism and moral responsibility or free will and whether they're compatible, this is the question. Basically, determinism is the idea that everything in the universe obeys the laws of physics, and the laws of physics are not random or anything. They're deterministic in the sense that if you have the initial conditions and you have the laws, you can work out what's going to happen in the future because everything's going to continue obeying the laws of physics. So imagine like a set of billiard balls, and you hit a billiard ball and it starts to roll towards another billiard ball, and you can sort of calculate exactly how the balls are going to bounce. All you need to know is where the balls are, the initial position, and the laws of physics governing the billiard balls. So you can predict the future just by knowing the laws of physics and the initial conditions. And the thought is that the whole universe is like the billiard balls. It's just a bunch of particles banging into each other and obeying the laws of physics. So just from the Big Bang plus the laws of physics, in effect, you could predict the entire future of everything that happens. So that's known as determinism. It's also known as causal determinism, the idea that, the laws of physics describe causation, and everything has been determined by the laws of physics plus the initial conditions. And so there's this question, one question you could have is determinism true? And that's like mostly a physics question, although it's also partially a philosophical question. But another question is, assuming determinism is true, or maybe at least it's true at the level of like the particles in our brain and stuff. Maybe it's false at the quantum level, but that's maybe irrelevant to how humans function. So if determinism is true, can we have free will? Can we have moral responsibility? So there's two positions here. One position is yes, free will and free will and determinism are compatible with each other, and that's known as compatibilism. And the other view is no, they are incompatible with each other. They don't go together, and that's known as incompatibilism. And so this paper is defending pretty much a version of compatibilism. It's saying free will can go together with determinism, and that's just a I I don't know in the past, uh, in the far past, before I was teaching at Ashoka, I've had students like, have a lot of trouble understanding compatibilism. So the first time I taught free will at Ashoka, I spent a lot of time trying to say like how compatibilism could make sense or something like that. But then it turned out nobody had any trouble sort of understanding it. It wasn't a very difficult concept. Uh, for the students here, I don't know if it was a different batch of students, or I don't know if students here are better. I don't know, whatever. So I guess I'm taking a wait and see approach with the class. If everybody has trouble with compatibilism, a future lecture maybe we'll go into it more. Um, but maybe the paper will. I mean, there's much more to compatibilism than just this paper. We're going to see a lot of debate about this kind of. But yeah, we'll just see how it goes.